In a few of my other videos, I've been talking to you about intellectual property. And so today, on this short video, I want to share with you how I made my first 100,000 using my intellectual property. I've touched on it, but I said, let me kind of explain it because I want you to see if I can do it, you can do it too. So I've shared the story a million times, but I want to share it with you again and hopefully highlight some of the things that I believe could be instrumental for you in terms of taking your intellectual property and making your first $100,000. Here's how I did it. I'd already started investing in real estate, so I'd made my first $100,000 and more in real estate. And I was studying this real estate guru. And this real estate guru invited me to a conference in Orlando, Florida. This conference had nothing to do with real estate investing. It had everything to do with how this investor, this guru, this trainer, this teacher, whatever you want to call him, had taken what he knew about real estate investing, all of his years of experience, his skill, his strategies, his techniques. He took everything that he was doing to make money into real estate. But now he took that knowledge, that experience, that wisdom, that skill set, and turned them into products. He took his intellectual property and turned them into products, programs, and services that could be monetized. Now, at first, I was a little leery, because I knew about the industry because we were both studying the same marketing guy who was talking about this stuff, legendary marketer. But and again, the language was called information marketing then. But this particular conference really highlighted and made me see the value in it and how I was already a part of purchasing the intellectual property of other people because I looked on my desk, prior to going, and I saw my Les Brown cassettes, and I saw my the VHS. I saw my the CD packages that I'd started studying with information, motivational speakers, uh, uh, personal development gurus, you name it. So I had all of this stuff. I was spending all of this money. But here's what I guess I wasn't thinking about it, but the real estate guru brought it right here to my face because he talked about how he made more money selling that knowledge, that intellectual property, than he did in real estate. And of course, now I'm thinking about it, but then he proved it to us. And he talked about the value of each customer to him and how they were upwards of $25,000 to $50,000 for one customer by selling his intellectual property. Now, right there, I started doing the math. I had purchased several courses and trainings from him. I had attended the boot camps. So it was like, yeah, I spent $2,000 on that course, $2,000 on that course. I did spend $5,000 on the boot camp. I did spend, $10,000 in the mastermind. And matter of fact, here I am today spending more money in this conference. So I was like, wow. So he's literally revealing the secrets, like I was a part. So I was a part of I don't want to call it a game because I received tremendous amount of value from everything. It laid the foundation for who and what I am. But it just, at that moment, it felt like, man, I'm a part of the game that this guy's been playing. But it's just a different game. It's a special game, but it's a game where everybody wins because what he was teaching and sharing with me, I was winning. Like I said, I'd made several $100,000, a couple $1 million in real estate transactions, private investment capital, all this stuff I learned from him. So I was winning. And I said, man. So at this conference, he taught that. And again, they packaged it in something that was called the information marketing. Was it toolkit? I can't remember the title that they put on it, but it was all about taking your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, and packaging it into, at that time, it was the home study courses. It was still, cassettes were fading out. So I talked about cassettes, but they were fading out. So it was CDs. But in this particular case, it was still cassettes. The home study course I bought, it was. So they issued the license. You could buy the actual conference. We had to wait on the duplicates and all of that type of stuff after the conference. We could literally buy the conference. And it was very reasonably cost at that time. I believe it was $600-700 for the license of these cassettes, these manuals. And I purchased them, brought them home. Now, of course, the license means that now I can reduplicate the cassettes, I can reduplicate the manuals, and I can sell them because it wasn't I didn't do the stuff on it. It wasn't my material, but I had the license to now sell the intellectual property of someone else. And here it is. I'm selling this, and my first two sales came within the first couple of weeks. I took out an ad, classified ad in a local newspaper talking about this business, and here it is. People weren't necessarily paying online, so I had people, one person sent in a personal check and one person sent in a money order, right? So here's the classified ad if you want the actual sales letter. So it's the free report. You send the report that sells the package. Two people bought the package, so I sent out several reports for people who requested it. Two people bought the package at $397 each, and so now I had to go to Kinko's and print out the manuals, and then I had my high speed. Luckily, I already had a cassette duplicator because I was in my prior career, I was in the music industry. So we used to always duplicate cassettes over and, share them and all of that type of stuff. So I'd already had a duplicating cassette machine. But I packaged that up and sent that out and cashed those two, the one money order and the check for $397. So I literally, with those two sales, I'd already made my investment back into this program. Now, this program was teaching all of these different things on how to take your knowledge and package it into home study courses, VHS tapes by videoing, cassettes, right, by high-speed duplicating or recording yourself in audio. But there was something beginning to happen at this time. The internet was taking off. So there was a few of the gurus who were there who are already making millions of dollars on the internet, but these were like the pioneers. It just got Corey Rudel, and there's a few others who are on there. And they taught me. It was just one tape. It was one section that they did at the conference, which turned into one tape on the in the package, and it was tape number 7. I'll never forget it. And that particular tape was all about taking your knowledge and experience, but now putting it on the internet, right? So the internet is growing. It's getting better and better from the late 90s to the early 2000s, getting better and better and faster. And people are becoming more excited about it and anxious about it, especially after the tech bubble busted. So people didn't know if that was a part of it, but the tech bubble busted in 1999. But now there's this new wave of technology being more advanced and all of that. And we can get into why the tech bubble busted at another time. But the point was, tape number 7 talked about creating an e-zine, right? And building your lists and then selling these same type of products, but through the internet, right? So you can still sell the cassettes and tapes and all of these different things, but now your marketing is online, right? It's not necessarily taking out a classified ad. It's finding people and marketing to them, getting them on your email list, and then selling them your intellectual property. I said, wow, this is interesting. This was all brand new. Even for the real estate guy, this was new, right? So I said, well, let me try, because that tape, I like to think that I'm a forward thinker, right? I like to be on the cutting edge of things. So I said, let me try it. We're going to do it. I mean, we were selling the other courses. So, I'd made my money back. And so I didn't have anything to lose. Again, it was win-win. People are winning. Now I'm teaching other people how to do this. But I said, if I'm going to teach other people how to do this, I'm doing the physical stuff. Let me try it now with my own intellectual property, but to cut cost. And now I don't want to do a conference and all of that stuff. Let me create the e-zine that they talked about. Let me build the list that they were talking about. And my passion was entrepreneurship for Black people. That's really what I wanted to teach on, right? So my first site, I got that domain purchased. I can't even remember how much it cost, but it was howtobeablackentrepreneur.com. Had a good friend of mine build it with it's called a landing page today, but it wasn't called a landing page back then. It was just a website, a fully functional website, but I didn't have a whole bunch of bells and whistles because this training taught you don't need all of the websites with all of the bells and whistles. You just need a place to capture names and emails. So now that you can begin to market to them. Remember, we were following the marketing guru. So this is called direct response marketing. So I did all of that, had him build the website. We were able to capture the email list. We didn't really have a system. So again, it was still kind of complicated. But now I'm starting to let all of the people who I know, who are in my groups with me, friends, family, everybody, hey, check out what I'm doing now. Go to How to Be a Black Entrepreneur and sign up. So now I'm communicating with people. I'm sending them emails. And now they're asking me, I'm giving them my experience in real estate. And so now they're asking me these questions, and I'm starting to talk about wholesaling real estate and all of this type of stuff. Really, I'm talking about all of the real estate, but the thing that was most appealing to people was wholesaling, because this was the process where you can literally get a house, tie it up with no money out of pocket, and then flip it to retailers, those who are going to go in and do the rehab and all of that work. So when you saw those signs, now they became famous after this, we buy ugly houses and all of that type of stuff. But prior to that, that wasn't the case. It wasn't that pretty and elaborate at that time. We would just be out grinding and talking about buying ugly houses. But I discovered and stumbled upon some techniques from that guru that helped me do it a little bit better and a little bit more effectively and efficiently. And so I'm doing it, and now people are ready to ask me about it. So here's where now I'm getting ready to launch and start making money selling my intellectual property, what I knew how to do and what has worked for me. So I said, since you all are asking me how to make money flipping real estate, I'm going to create a small report, which is really just a document. It was a Microsoft Word document that you converted into a PDF, and then I uploaded it online on your server that you paid a lot of money to have your website and everything hosted on. And it was made available there. But we were making way more money than what the title suggested. And I actually shared the title and the actual old cover that the brother designed in a previous video. You can check that out, the last video that we shared. But the report that I titled, definitely following the rules of the marketing guru, I said, well, how to make $2,000 a month flipping nasty, stinking, ugly houses. And we were making more than 2,000, but I was learning my audience. And if I'd have said anything higher, like how to make 10,000 a month, people would have got a little leery because they weren't used to that. And like, I ain't selling no drugs, brother B. I ain't into all of that type of stuff. So I minimized the value of what you can make flipping these houses to make it palatable to the audience that was going to buy it. And it worked. How to make $2,000 a month flipping nasty, stinking, ugly houses. I typed out that report. It could have literally, it was only 6, 7 stages or steps to do this, right? So I took my intellectual property, again, the 6 steps that I utilize to locate, wrap up, and flip an ugly house, right? That was my process. That's what I knew how to do. That was my skill set. I'd done it dozens of times. And so I've now typed out the steps to transfer that knowledge to other people. Put it in that Word doc, had it converted to the PDF, as I mentioned, uploaded that PDF to my server, and now it's there. I typed the email to send out late at night. First, I had already got my PayPal account. So PayPal was just coming out. So I got my PayPal account, created the payment link, which again this stuff was difficult back in the day, trying to figure this stuff out. So take an hour or two to kind of figure this stuff out. You get the link. Now I have the link. I didn't have a sales page or anything like that, just that link. And I put that link in my email. So you all have been asking me how I'm making this money flipping these ugly houses. I created a small report. It ended up being an 11-page report. Like I said, it could have just been 2 pages, but I added a lot of white space, and I had my graphics guy to give me just a few other images to kind of space it out and beef it up a little bit. So it ended up turning into a very short report, 11 pages. Like I said, could have really just been 2 pages, really 1 page, but to outline and detail the steps and my thinking and everything behind it. Again, my intellectual property on why I did this, why I didn't do this, what happened. So I put all of that in the report. And to do all of that, 11 pages, upload it, type that short email, put the PayPal link in there. Almost got to sneeze. Put the PayPal link in there. Oh, I'm going to keep this on the video. So pardon me for sneezing. Oh, summertime. I sent out that email. I waited till late at night. It was after midnight when I sent out the email. And I avoided my computer the following day, even though a lot of my work now is being done on the computer. But I'm avoiding the computer because I don't want to, I don't know if this is work. I'm kind of afraid, scared. Why, I don't know. Even though the gurus are saying it's working out, I'm cool with all of the other stuff, but this is really brand new. I finally open up my computer, and then I see those 4 words. The most beautiful 4-word phrase in the annals of human history, according to me, because it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life. Again, I love let us make man, let there be light, whatever 4-word phrase baby, I love you, whatever you can come up with, all of that is fine and dandy. But seeing these 4 words, notification of payment received, changed my life. I started seeing those on the computer screen, quite a few of them. And if the page, you can only have 10 to 15 at a time, you're looking at a full page, that just looks different, seeing all of those notifications of payment received. Never seen anything like that. I thought it was tripping. I thought it was broken. So I refreshed the screen, and there they were. Then I started going to the next page, and there they were. I said, wow. So over the next 24 to 48 hours, I literally sold over 200 of those little $7 reports. So I'm going to my PayPal account, because that's where the notification of payment receipt comes from. The PayPal sends you the notice after somebody pays. And I couldn't believe it. So I'd made over $1,400, the quickest $1,400 I'd ever made in my life legally, up to that point, right? But now I'm making money selling the reports. And so now I'm still selling that report now. Don't get me. So we're still selling that report. So we're making a few more thousand, few more thousand. Now I start asking, well, what else do you all want to know? I'm start surveying my list as other people are coming onto my list. Because now people are going out and they flipping houses. They're having some success with my intellectual property. So now I'm selling those reports, but now I start creating other small reports. They want to know about time management. Anything that's dealing with entrepreneurship now, it's still time management for Black entrepreneurs, how to use the internet for Black entrepreneurs. So I'm creating all of these small reports, and I'm charging $7, $10, very affordable, but I'm selling hundreds and hundreds of these things. And so now it doesn't take long for $10, then we start increasing to $20 reports, because now as I'm learning, I'm finding out that I'm undercharging. So now the gurus, you're charging not enough, right? This is your intellectual property, because now think about it, I'm charging $7 for a report, but people are taking what I'm saying and they're going out and flipping a house and making $5,000. Right. So $7, they're making $5,000. So even if I charged $100 for that report, they made $5,000. They're making tremendous money. If they just made $2,000 for a $7 report, $10 report, I could have charged, and this is what the gurus were making me to understand at that time, quote unquote gurus, that the value wasn't in the report, the 7 pages. It was in the intellectual property that yields the bigger results that people were receiving. And that was the light bulb moment that went off for me. Because now I'm creating reports, we're raising our prices, and we made well over $100,000 selling small reports on various aspects of business and entrepreneurship, and from a Black perspective, all of the things that I was doing. Because now I'm teaching them wholesale, but then I started teaching some people pretty houses, how to raise private cash. So I'm teaching everything that I know, everything that I'm experiencing in my head to make money. So that's how we made over the first $100,000, but it didn't stop there. I was studying a book from one of these internet gurus. He had a partner. They wrote a book, and it was called Conversations with Millionaires. And this was a physical book that you purchased it online. They were selling the physical book, but you purchased it online, and then they sent it to you. Now, you got to remember, all of this is before YouTube. This is before Amazon, right? So when I'm talking about these ebooks, this was before Kindle. You couldn't just go to Amazon and buy these books. So we had to sell them online. We just called them small reports or special reports, or in some cases, books that was delivered digitally, or people would sell their physical books online, but they still have to ship them out. So this was before Amazon. This was before YouTube. This was before for any of the social media channels. This is before Zoom, all of this type of stuff. This is how hard it was back then. So I'm trying to show you how easy it has become nowadays, because none of this existed back then when we were selling these products and services, yet we were still able to make money. And as I mentioned, and I have a couple of friends now who started back then as well, have gone on to make millions and millions of dollars, literally building 8-figure companies purely online. But I digress. We'll talk about that in another video. But as I'm reading this book called Conversations with Millionaires, this book only had one Black person in it, which was Famous Amos from Wallace, Famous Amos from Famous Amos Cookies. It had the Zig Ziglars, Stephen Covey, I believe Robert Kiyosaki, it was his partner, Sharon Lecter, not Robert Kiyosaki, a few others, just probably all of the personal development gurus that you probably could think of during that time. There were a few in this book. But as I'm reading this book now, the idea, it was like a lightning bolt. Because now I'm selling all of this stuff, these ebooks, these digital ebooks, small reports, and I'm not running out of content or things to write about in these small reports. So you can literally just ask people what they want. And so this is where I learned. So even if I didn't know it, my own intellectual property, I could go and research it, or I could interview somebody. So that's where these conversations were, a series of interviews that these guys did with all of these millionaires. And I said, wow, wouldn't it be nice if somebody interviewed Black millionaires and put it in an ebook? Sounds good to me. And it just so happens someone had already started doing that through a process. It was Dr. Dennis Kimbro. He had started writing a book on what makes the great great, and he's interviewing millionaires and successful people, but he's not necessarily calling them millionaires. Then he's finishing up the work, or he finished up the work of Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich, a Black Church, which is the book that I'm reading, that book, which also talks about the interviewing process that he's gone through with different people. So it's like, wow, so he's doing it, but never not using that title, but I'm reading that book, Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, who had become a millionaire during this process, taking his intellectual property and the intellectual property of the people that he interviewed and writing about it and creating this work. And this was it was two books at that time that, if you were serious about entrepreneurship and business, especially coming out of the 90s into the 2000s, there were three thought leaders in our community that was out there. It was Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, there was Les Brown, and then there was Dr. Frazier, George C. Frazier. So I'm reading, so the two books that because Dr. Les Brown had, of course, had all of the motivational tapes and things like that. So that's what he was famous for. But Dr. Frazier and Dr. Dennis Kimbrough had the books, and I was literally reading both of those books because I was told, if you're serious, Brother B, you got to read Success Runs in Our Race and Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice. So I'm reading them. This idea hits me. And so now I'm looking, I say, well, here's the two people that I need to start interviewing right now. So my first interview, I called down to Cleveland, Ohio, at least to try to get these interviews. I said, wouldn't it be nice if somebody would interview Black millionaires and put it in an ebook? Since I'm selling all of these ebooks, now I can take those interviews and put them into an ebook. Called down to Cleveland, Ohio. I've told the story a million times. The young lady that was working there, she, again, this is all new, so I'm you know, I'm like, this is this brother from Detroit. I'm calling. I got this idea. I'm all excited. I want to interview George Frazier for my book. It's going to be called Conversations with Millionaires, and it's an ebook. And she's like, ebook, right? Again, this is no Amazon, so she doesn't know what I'm talking about. So she finally, as we're talking, she's shooting me down, I mean, literally killing brother spirits, because she's like, oh, I don't think he would be interested in that, blah, blah, blah. I said, I tell you what, can I leave my number and he can call me if he's interested? She said, I'll take your number down, but I can't guarantee you that he'll call, so you might want to try back in 6 months. Okay, thank you. Hang up the phone. And of course, I get off, and now my heart is sunk. To show you how God works, though, right? About 5 to 10 minutes later, I receive a phone call on my new, cell phones now, right? So we're coming into the cell phone, and I receive this call on my cell phone. I see the 216 area code. And I answer it, and as I'm putting it to my ear, I can hear the airport noise in the back. And so the airport noise, you're hearing the announcement, but then the voice comes. I'm like, hello? Hey, young man, this is George Frazier, and I hear you want to interview me. So my heart is pumping now. I got new life. So my heart is pumping. And I'm like, yes, sir, Dr. Frazier, I do want to interview you, but I can't do it like this. I need you to call into this, what was called at that time, a bridge line. There was no Zoom. It was a bridge line. It was just an audio recording. And I call in, and then I press record, and I can interview you over the phone. Again, this was not video. This was pure audio. That service that I used was freeconferencecall.com. He called in, I called in, press record, then we can do the interview. So as I told him that, he said, that's fine. I'll be in my office in around 20 to 30 minutes, and I'll email me the number, and I'll call in, and then you call. I said, fine. So what probably happened, and now George and I are very great friends. He's my Jegna mentor, dear friends. Just was texting with him a couple of days ago. He was giving me some quotes for my new book, The Black Entrepreneurial Revolution, that he read. And I don't know if we've talked about this, but I don't know if I've ever asked him the exact process. But it appears that once he landed, he called into the office, and the young lady probably said, whatever information he was giving her or she was giving him, she probably said, no, and by the way, this knucklehead guy from Detroit called wants to interview you for some ebook that he's doing. Now the reason I'm saying this is critically important is because what she didn't think was important, he knew it was important, that he wanted to give the interview. He's in the business of sharing his intellectual property. And if I had a book or a show or platform that could introduce him and his knowledge and his books and all of his intellectual property to other people, why wouldn't he do it? Right. So now, as I'm looking back, hindsight is 2020. That's the value that I was providing to him, is to interview him to get his content out to an audience that he's trying to reach. She didn't understand that, but he understood that. So that's why he called immediately, because he wanted to get interviewed. He's trying to sell books. He's trying to sell a conference. He's got a lot of things that he's selling. So if he can get on platforms for free and to speak, it benefits him. It's a win for him. So I'm hoping you're getting, I'm dropping some jewels here, and I'm hoping that you're getting out, try to summarize it as I conclude this lengthy story that I'm telling you of how I made my first 100K. Now with my own intellectual property, but now I'm sharing with you how I've done it with other people's intellectual property. So we did that interview, just so I won't be too long. It was valuable to him. He got to the office. That 30 minutes gave me enough time to write 5 or 6 questions down, basic questions. And we got on the phone, and I believe we spoke for about an hour and 35 minutes. He gave me so much content, so much. I would ask a question and he would go. And so now I take that MP. So now after you record it, you get the MP3 file. So the MP3 file, I send, or the plan is to send the MP3s to another service called, and it was just starting. Again, all of these are new services back then. A lot of bugs and everything was happening with these services, but it was Fiverr.com, as people can so it was the eBay of services. People did transcriptions and all of that type of stuff. So the plan is to send the MP3s over there. They have them transcribed, send them back. Now I have that PDF document, combine all of the interviews into that PDF document, upload it, and now I have my ebook, Conversation with Black Millionaires. That was the plan, and that's what we did. After I interviewed Dr. Frazier, as I mentioned, I was reading his book. The other book was Here's a Success in Our Race. The other book was Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough and Napoleon Hill. I called down to Atlanta, Georgia, and spoke to, I believe it was his wife who was assisting him at that time. She said she wasn't as hard on me as the young lady in Dr. Frazier's office, but she was definitely, I'm not sure that Dr. Kimbrough would do that. So apparently, again, I haven't asked either one of them this, because I know that they do so many interviews, and when we finally develop relationships, and now they're both mentors of mine, and we've talked about it, and they've been with me, and I've shared this story, but I've never quite asked them, what happened for them to call me back so immediately and things like that. But my theory is, now again, hindsight is 2020, being in the industry, learning the value of being on platforms, conducting interviews, and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. Now, knowing all of that, I could only assume that she told Dr. Dennis Kimbrough the same thing. This knucklehead guy from Detroit wants to interview you for an ebook called Conversations with Black Millionaires. Lo and behold, I get a call on my cell phone. I believe it was a 404 area code. I'm looking at that's 404. I think that's Atlanta. And he has a deep, bellowy voice. Young man, this is Dr. Kimbrough, and I hear you want to interview me, right? Same thing. Yes, sir, Dr. Kimbrough, can't do it here. Now, here's the thing. We almost did it immediately. I said, I have a bridge line, right? So I need to send that to you. And you call in and I call in, and then we do the interview and it's recorded, right? So he's like, fine, what is it? So I tell him what it is, and he's going to hang up and call back in, and I'm going to hang up and call right back in. Now, fortunately, I had already written down questions for Dr. Frazier, right? So all I got to do is ask the same questions, but now just replace them specific, a couple of questions, just kind of alter them to fit what Dr. Kimbrough does, right? And as opposed to, so instead of networking, talking to Dr. Frazier about networking, I was talking to Dr. Kimbrough about building Black wealth, right? So just modified the questions a little bit. We had a conversation, beautiful conversation, same process, sent that audio over. Now I have those two audios. Now I'm in business now because now I can leverage them. And so who did I mention earlier? Les Brown, right? He was my third interview. Said, I've called his office. I can't remember where was Les. It was, I believe Les was in Chicago at that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was in Chicago or St. Louis, something like that at that time. I think it was Chicago. And his assistant gave a little twist, right? Because now Les has been out and Les had been exposed to this industry. As a matter of fact, a lot of the gurus that I talked about, they were interviewing Les Brown. So he was very familiar with this. So this was definitely not new to him. So when I called to his office, his assistant said, this was the twist. This was the first time I'd heard this. Well, who had you interviewed already? So now she wanted to, what was my experience? What was my credibility? And of course, Les Brown want to know who's going to be on this thing with him, right? So this is the first thing. So I'm learning all of this as I go. Again, these are nuggets for you as you're building up your intellectual property business, right? Because I tell everyone we're in two businesses nowadays. We all are media companies. Like, look at what I'm doing right now. This is like media, right? I'm broadcasting my own media to you. We're all media companies and we're all intellectual property companies, right? Creating content, whether it's from our own or with other people. So let's ask that question. Who had you interviewed already? So now think about the credibility here. Well, I've interviewed Dr. Frazier and I've interviewed Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And mind you, these are his friends, best friends. So it was like, of course, I'll do it. So now, and then when we get on, he was actually out somewhere speaking. So he called in from a location where he was getting ready to speak. He was actually in a hotel room. And we talking, if you go and listen to that audio, you'll hear that it wasn't as long as the other two because he had a speaking engagement, but it was still valuable and meaty, just giving great content that could help people. But when you listen to it, we're laughing almost like we long lost cousins or something like that. But that's his nature, right? So, and I'm dropping nuggets for you to kind of pick up here. I want you to think about that when people were first reading that. And he also says something else about my voice towards the end of the interview. I think he was trying to get me to buy his packages, though, to be honest with you. Les he's always selling, right? So Les Brown, he's teaching people how to become public speakers. And so as I'm interviewing him, listen to my voice, he say, oh, your voice is yes, a gold mine, brother. So he's pumping me up to kind of, so I'm like, thank you. My point is, we did end up working together. That's a given. But I use that quote as a part of my promotions for Conversations with Black Millionaires that Les Brown calls Brother Bedford a gold mine. Right? So I use that quote. So I'm able to extract pieces of what they're saying either to me or about me to kind of help with my promotions and building up my credibility, but also building up my confidence, right? This is huge. I'm talking to the three thought leaders of Black economic development at that time. These are my first interviews. And so, but I got to keep going. So then I'm looking up and there was a gentleman who had just come off an Oprah show. He was one of the young millionaires under 40. Yeah, I believe it was under 40. I said, well, man, I gotta interview that guy. And his name was Andrew Morrison, right? And we become great friends and started working together and doing things. So that's another nugget for you. Everybody that I've mentioned, and even more, have become dear friends of mine. So this idea of getting in the space where you're sharing your intellectual property, but then you start engaging in the interviews and extracting and working with other people and their intellectual property, it's the spark to start building relationships. And so I have relationships with all of these people that I've mentioned thus far. But I interviewed Andrew Morrison and we just had a great time. He was in the space with me too. So he was one of the early pioneers in this internet space as well. So he was very familiar. So we started working together after this. But now I have these 4 interviews. And so now think of the questions whenever I reach out. I said, but, and so naturally I want, now I need women. Where are the Black women millionaires? And I love me some Kathy Hughes. Oh my God, still love Kathy. Um, and I reached out to Kathy Hughes' office. And the young lady there, again, very pleasant. She said, well, that sounds great. Why don't you email her? Miss Hughes answers all of our emails. Like, what? That was new. So now I send off an email. Now look at the way I'm crafting this email now. Now I've already shared with you the first 100K. And now and don't forget, I'm still selling reports. So we're already over that. Now we're approaching multiple 6 figures now. And what this was the thing that kind of blew me up and took me over the top. Um, but I'm sharing so these are the breadcrumbs for you. So now, as I'm talking, or I'm typing out the email, look at all what I'm pulling from. And by the way, so the email this is Brother Bedford. I'm writing this ebook, Conversations with Black Millionaires. Now look at the twist here, because now I know. Here are the people that I've interviewed already: Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, Dr. George Frazier, Les Brown, Andrew Morrison. So now Kathy Hughes says yes, right? So she tells me to email the number to her assistant and set up the day. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. I'm getting ready to interview Kathy Hughes. This is crazy, right? And then so now we get on, I get questions. She tells me her story. And then at the end of the interview, I said, Ms. Hughes, this is like the highlight of my career because I've been following Kathy Hughes for some time. Big fan of it. She's doing, first is, it's Radio One, but then TV One, just so many different things. That she was a part of. Then her interviews, right? So she's interviewing all of these stars from the Denzel Washingtons and just she's Kathy Hughes. So now as I'm interviewed at the conclusion of that interview, and when I listen to these audios, I am not that good, you all. I mean, so I'm still learning and growing. So when I listen to some of these interviews, I'm cringing at all of the ums and the way that I'm talking. I feel like I'm slurring my words. I'm like, oh my God, thank God that we're out of that phase. Um, but at the conclusion of the interview, I said, Miss Hughes, this is like the highlight of my career. I just want to thank you. And she said, no, Brother Bedford, I want to thank you for including me in your work. That was it. I was done. So if you talk about now the boost, the energy, the confidence that I gained from that, now I'm off and running. So now I'm interviewing. Brother just won Donald Trump's apprentice. So I interviewed Dr. Randall Pinkett again. We've gone on to become good friends. Then I interviewed Lisa Nichols. She was in the space doing things. So there was Lisa Nichols. And then, so let me backtrack real quick. I just got to plant this seed here real quick because I wanted to interview Bob Johnson. At this time, though, Bob Johnson had become a billionaire. Now, here's the thing. I still wanted to interview him, but it was his team that said, well, technically, you know, he's a billionaire. So here's what they said to me. I tell you what, why don't he just write the forward for the book? So now, think on that. I don't even have to make the suggestion that Bob Johnson, and that's something I leave out a lot myself too. Bob Johnson wrote the foreword for my book, and I've had interaction with him since then. But he wrote the foreword for Conversations with Black Millionaires. Crazy, right? So anyway, so now I say that to say that now I get the opportunity, and there's another billionaire on the horizon. But I had interaction with him. He was spending time in Detroit, building hotels, Michael V. Roberts, right? And then of course, now as I'm getting onto the platforms and speaking, we become friends. But this was before we became friends. I asked him for the interview, and he said, "Sure." No, he doesn't matter. I'm third black billionaire. It doesn't matter. So I'm interviewing Michael V. Roberts, technically a billionaire in this series at that time, right? And I could go on and on. So now I'm just interviewing. Oh man, I got Picard, 400 million. I mean, I just started interviewing Linda Clemens, so many others that I've just kept on. And even today, I still interview. I don't put it up under the banner of Conversation with Black Millionaires, but I interview millionaires and successful people just again to continue to share this intellectual property. So let me land this plane. I took the first 9 interviews, had them transcribed, put them in the ebook, uploaded it, Conversations with Black Millionaires, and started letting people know that it was available. I think we started off selling it for $20 and it was selling well. So now again, we're making thousands and thousands of dollars. But then this training, this course, start using press release. There was a gentleman named, I believe it was Joe Vitale, who did this thing called butterfly marketing. And his whole thing was about press releases and giving the media stories. And so I wrote a press release, budding Black entrepreneur, that's me, seeks millionaire advice and gets it. That was the headline. And sent that press release over. Shout out to my man Dante Lee over at Black News and Black PR, another friend of mine. And I keep saying that. This is not name dropping. I'm trying to share with you how this process can lead to great relationships is really what the point I'm trying to when I'm drilling that home, which is the lifeblood of your business. So we sent out the press release, and now look at what ended up happening as a result of the press release. Not only are we sending people directly from the press release and the articles that are written from the press release to the website, Conversations with Black Millionaires, to download the ebook that now we've raised the price to, there was all of this research done and from $20 to $27 now. And they're downloading them. So you're talking about thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people downloading a digital product for $27. You can start doing the math on this. But now, like I said, the thing that kind of pushed it over the top, now there's a thing when you do the press release, it's called a resource box. The resource box gives not only the website, but how for media inquiries, how they can contact me. And so now I'm starting to do interviews on Valentine's show, especially all of the XM satellite radio XM and Sirius was blowing up at this. So everything was like the perfect, I guess, storm, for the lack of a better term. So now I'm on all of these XM satellite radio stations, all of these local AM stations where people are having talks. So talk radio is beginning to boom, especially Black talk radio. So I'm on all of these programs and they want to talk to me about what did these Black millionaires share with you, right? That you interview. And now all I got to do is go on there and say, Dr. Frazier told me this, and here's what Les Brown told me. Here's what Kathy Hughes said to me. I'm giving all of the stories. So it's a part of my intellectual property, but it's not necessarily my original content. Man, this is like striking gold. And then at the end of these interviews, where there are literally tens of thousands of people listening, go to conversationswithblackmillionaires.com and download the ebook. And I was getting downloads from all over the world, Africa, the UK, China. But I always tell the story of someone from Barbados downloading and they writing me a long email thanking me. I can't, here's the flip side. I can't even begin to tell you how many people that I've encountered that thank me for doing that, because now they are able to hear and see and listen and read what these Black millionaires taught. So these became guides and inspiration and motivation for thousands of people. I wasn't thinking that far out, but that's what ended up happening. Years later, I'm at the Power Networking Conference, and a sister who's out here now doing tremendous work as a motivational speaker. She comes up to me, she's got tears in her eyes, and she's thanking me, because here's the thing with her. After the ebook, those same audios I turned into a podcast. First, I turned it into an audio package. So I was selling the audio package. So you can buy the ebook and get the audios for free. So that's a whole nother story on how to add and create value on existing products, turned it into a membership site, people paying $10 a month. It was crazy, right? But she came up to me with tears in her eyes and thanked me, because these interviews got her. She was going through a divorce, didn't know what she's going to do with her life, but now she's listening to interviews with Dr. Frazier and Les Brown and me, right? I'm on these audios as well, and it's giving her the fuel. And now she's one of the top speakers in the country. I got tons of people who are out here doing their thing, and they started with these interviews or downloading my small reports and things like that. So now I can land the plane, because I've already told you that these interviews became podcasts and things like that. Um, First, an audio package that we sold, then I turned them into podcasts. And to the same day, they're still in my vault, in my membership, and people go in and they can hear. I don't even have all of them in there. Again, I keep telling people I keep dropping the ball on this, but some I want to do new ones, because again, I did all of this on freeconferencecall.com. The quality isn't the best. I wasn't the best interviewer, so I've continually tried to update my interviews and now I just give people the new ones. Anything that I do is just not up under the banner of Conversation with Black Millionaires, but it's still the same format, same type of content that we deliver. And it was great. And again, first 100K blew through all of that, but you get the gist of this, that you can. So now wrap it up. I know I don't been on it. I know I'm taking a long time, but I'm gonna wrap it up. It would be nice if I had somebody around me saying, wrap it up. I know I'm talking. Um, you can take your own knowledge, your own experience, your own expertise, your own passion, your interests, and your curiosities. It's best, again, in order for it to be, and I'll do another video on the core ingredients of intellectual property that makes it marketable, right? Because you want people to buy it, right? It's one thing to have something in your head and say, I know something, but it has to be something that people want as well. People wanted to know how to flip real estate, right? So they wanted to know, that people wanted to know what did these Black millionaires know to make them successful, right? So people wanted to know. So you can take your own knowledge, experience, expertise, um, skill sets, frameworks, anything that you've done, your solutions to problems, whether it's on a job. You can be working for somebody else and you've come up with a solution to help that business grow. Now you have a solution that now you can take that and package it for other people who want that solution, right? So now you can take your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, your solutions to problems and turn it into intellectual property that could pay you over and over and over again. But I gave you the bonus in this as well, is that if you're bold enough if you're brave enough, if you're courageous enough, you can link up with other people and learn how to take their intellectual property combined with your intellectual property to create other products and services, again, that people can buy. And now, remember, I did all of this with freeconferencecall.com, Bridgeline. Now we zooming all over the place. We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have LinkedIn, we didn't have any of these things. Instagram, TikTok, all of the technology that has exploded over the last 10 to 15 years. When I first started, we didn't have any of that. You can get in contact with your audience. Some of you already have audience. So right now you're watching me and you have an audience, but you have not taken your intellectual property and turned it into income, wealth, assets. Conversation with Black millionaires, I can use that for the rest of my life. It's mine. My reports, even though, the flipping, houses, that stuff is changing. If I did an updated version, I could do that. But a lot of the stuff that I've created, notification of payment received, that's my intellectual property. So I created other intellectual property teaching people how to do this. And by the way, I'm going to do, now that I say that, I'm going to put a link below this video. I'm going to do a mini mastermind because I'm up here telling people about turning your intellectual property into cash or income, especially in today's climate. And I've been advising people. I've been doing these one-on-one conversations, and that's been the advice I've been, especially to professionals who've been in business or had their businesses for years, but now they're stuck in certain areas. I'm like, but you got all of that knowledge, you got all of that intellectual property. Why don't you think about turning that into to cash flow, to assets, to income? And so I'm giving this advice, but then it hit me the other day. I said, well, maybe it's, people still don't know exactly how to do this, right? So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to do a mini mastermind, just a 3-day, not all in a row, but I'm going to do a 3-day mini mastermind over the course of 3 weeks, one day a week, a couple hours a day, to answer all the questions on how you can do this. It's going to be for a small, intimate group. I'll put the link in there. The dates, I'm going to look over here on the calendar again real quick. It's June 3rd, 10th, and 17th are the days I'm going to do that. So it's for 3 days. On those days in June, which is just a few weeks away, if you want to get your seat, secure a spot so that I can help you, everything that I'm sharing with you, talk to you on how to do it, how you can take yours, show you the blueprint on how I did it, give you extra curriculum and things like that that can help you with that. If you're interested, just click the link below. You'll get just the details. Again, it's nothing elaborate. This is not high ticket. This is not some big coaching program. I didn't want to do a coaching program. I didn't want to do another membership, because just as I shared what I need to share with you in this video, I can share it in a few days, in a few hours, and it'll be more than sufficient. And you can go about the business of taking your intellectual property and making your first 100K, right? So that link will be below. So you can take your own knowledge, experience, wisdom, expertise. You can take the knowledge and wisdom of others that you interact with, engage with, or interview, and create these products and services. And I think that's it. But with just what I share with you, that's why I wanted to make sure I was there. Even if you don't join me in the mini mastermind, just what I've shared with you today is enough for you to go out and start turning your intellectual property into digital products or even physical products. But I prefer digital products. It's because there's no cost. It didn't cost me anything to create that PDF. Didn't cost anything to create video. Now we can create video and audio. So that's why I love the delivery of the digital space. And plus, your audience is worldwide. So even if you're thinking in your local town, who's going to buy my knowledge here as they used to ask me, who's buying ebooks in Detroit? And I used to say, I don't care if anybody ever buy ebooks in Detroit, because I was selling ebooks in Atlanta, California, everywhere else, Africa, the UK, people were buying my ebooks. And so you have a global audience when you take your intellectual property, and now think about it, there's 1,000 people somewhere who want to know what you know, right? Your skill sets, your mindsets, your knowledge. You have this. It just needs to be extracted from you. And that's what I want to help you do in this I guess I'm calling like in this intellectual property mastermind, mini mastermind, this intellectual property mini mastermind. See, I just created that, this intellectual property mini mastermind. See, this is an intellectual property that I'm going to create to show you how to take your intellectual property and make your first $100,000. So this is your brother Bedford. Stay tuned. I got more that I want to share with you. And if you know, do me a favor. And I probably should have said this earlier because they say people don't always stay to the end. Hopefully it was entertaining enough for you to stay to the end, but like and subscribe, share this knowledge with others who you think would benefit from this. There's a lot of people who are talented, have a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, a lot of expertise, and they're losing their jobs. But now it's time to take what they know and turn that into the income that they'll probably be missing, or that they can replace income or have additional income as prices are rising and things are becoming more and more expensive. So this is your brother B. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you think about what we're sharing in these videos. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.